Her name was Evelyn. In 1965, when she moved from the house where she had raised her children into a smaller apartment, she boxed up what she couldn't fit and brought it to the church rummage sale. 2 cardboard boxes. The women at the table thanked her and moved on. Those 2 boxes held what antique dealers now call a collection, a complete Pyrex set, 8 pieces of Jadeite Fire King, a Griswold skillet with the original finish. The church sold them for 60 cents. Number 3 is why that skillet would now bring $600 at auction. Number 1 is the reason she kept it and never had a word for why. Let's count down. Number 9, Sunbeam Mixmaster. The chrome stand mixer with its 2 nested white bowls sat on the counter between the toaster and the canister set. It did not live in a cabinet. It lived on the counter because it was used nearly every week. Batters on Tuesday, bread dough on Wednesday, meringue for a dinner that mattered. Sunbeam introduced the Mixmaster in the 1930s, and by the middle of the 1950s, the chrome-bodied model with its low-profile bowls and 2 stainless steel beaters was in kitchens across the country. The price at Sears ran between $29 and $35, depending on the attachments included. Good housekeeping had given it the seal of approval, and women bought it on that alone. She bought one and did not buy another for 30 years. The chrome scratched, but the motor kept running. A working Sunbeam Mixmaster from the 1950s, original model, not the reproduction, sells today for $150 to $350. One found with the original attachments in the box brings $400. The reproduction currently sold in kitchen stores costs $299 and carries a 2-year warranty. The original has no warranty. It is still running. Number 8, tin canister sets. 4 canisters in graduated sizes, flour, sugar, coffee, tea. Printed in a script font on the front with a red stripe or a rooster print or an apple orchard stenciled along the top edge. They sat on the counter to the right of the stove in virtually every American kitchen from the late 1940s through the late 1970s. She did not think of them as anything. They held things. They matched. When the lid on the flour canister stopped sealing, she worked the hinge with a kitchen knife until it caught again. A complete matched set of vintage tin kitchen canisters from the 1950s, all 4 pieces, original labeling, no rust beyond the surface, sells today for $150 to $350 depending on the pattern. A full set in the red roosters or apple orchard prints has sold above $500. Individual pieces sell for $40 to $80 each. The matching is the thing. 1 canister from a set is worth $15. All 4 from the same set are worth 10 times that. The flour went in the flour canister. The sugar went in the sugar canister. That was how it worked, and she did not think about it more than that. Number 7, Corningware, blue cornflower. The white casserole dish with the single small blue cornflower on the side. Corning had introduced it in 1958, and by 1962, one was in nearly every kitchen in the country. Plain, almost severe. The claim on the box was that it could go from the freezer to a 400-degree oven without cracking. Women were skeptical. The advertisement in the October 1960 Ladies' Home Journal showed a woman in a shirtwaist dress lifting the dish straight from the freezer and placing it directly in the oven. Women read it and tested it themselves. It worked. A 1.5-quart casserole with its glass lid was $4.95 in 1960. Full sets ran from $18 to $25 at Sears or Woolworths. She used it twice a week. Tuesday was the chicken. The smell of it roasting reached every room in the house by 3 in the afternoon. Friday was whatever needed the oven. Today, a complete blue cornflower set with lids in good condition brings $200 to $400. Individual pieces start at $50. An 11-piece set with the original Corning box has sold for more than $800. The white and blue pattern that seemed too ordinary to keep is now the most searched pattern in the Corningware resale market. It outlasted everything that came after it. That is why it is still here. Here is something that does not usually get said directly. The women arriving early at estate sales in the 1980s and 1990s, the ones who went immediately to the kitchen tables, who picked up the green glass and turned it over, who recognized the cast iron logo from across the room. They knew what they were looking at. The antique dealers knew. The collector networks had circulating newsletters. The buyers knew which Pyrex patterns had been discontinued, which Griswold markings were the earlier and more valuable castings, which jadeite pieces had already begun to appear in specialty catalogs. They did not share this with the women running the rummage sales. The gap between what a jadeite mug was priced at a church basement in 1987 and what it sold for 2 weeks later at an antique mall was not an accident. It was a market. The knowledge was the asset, and the knowledge moved in one direction only. Evelyn was not deceived. Nobody owed her a price guide. But the reason those 2 boxes sold for 60 cents is not that the church women mispriced the table. It is that the people who knew the price were not the ones selling. If you have already watched the video on what was hiding in her jewelry box, the crements pieces, the Coro craft, the 1950s brooches in their original boxes, you have already seen this pattern. That video is on this channel. Number 6, Enamelware percolator. The blue and white speckled coffee percolator on the back burner. Graniteware, pressed steel coated in porcelain enamel, made in patterns that included solid white, blue and white spatter, and the gray and white mottled variety that women called cloud. The lid had a small glass knob. The coffee brewed slowly, filling the kitchen with a smell that reached the bedroom before she did. It was the last thing she touched before bed, and the first thing she lit in the morning. Price in 1950, $2.50 to $3 for a standard 6-cup model. Today, $100 to $250 for a clean piece without significant chipping. Unusual colors, teal, cobalt, and solid red, bring $300 and above. A full matching graniteware kitchen set, percolator, covered pot, roasting pan, and basin in the same pattern, $500 to $800. The chips knocked the value down substantially. She kept hers from chipping by drying it before putting it away and never letting it sit damp on the burner. She had been doing this for as long as she had owned it, without thinking of it as anything other than putting things away properly. This video is part of a longer investigation into how women ran their households in the 1950s, the real version, not the magazine version. If you want to go deeper, the Forgotten 1950s Feminine Routine Manual is 150 pages of exactly that at nostalgiawomen.com. This is the only mention. Number 5. Depression glass, the pink cake plate on the 3rd shelf. The green water glasses that had come with the matching pitcher years before, or arrived free with a tank of gas at the filling station, or came loose in the bottom of an oatmeal box, not collected, just what was in the cupboard. Depression glass was made between the late 1920s and early 1940s by Federal Glass, Anchor Hawking, and Jeannette Glass Company. Pink, green, amber, and cobalt, at prices almost anyone could afford. By the 1950s, it had been in most kitchens for 20 years without being called anything at all. A pink cherry blossom pattern cake stand cost approximately 50 cents at retail in the 1930s. Today, one sells for $150 to $300. A cobalt royal lace full service for $8, including dinner plates, salad plates, tumblers, creamer, and sugar, has sold above $500. The rarest pieces are not the most ornate. The rarest pieces are the ones washed every day for 20 years without chipping. Durability was the filter. The pieces that survive daily use are the pieces that survive to be collected. She was washing the dishes. She did not know she was running a filter. Number 4. Fire King Jadeite. Pale, milky seafoam green. Not quite the color of jade, closer to the inside of a wave, or the light through old bottle glass. She had 8 of them lined up in the cabinet and used them every morning. They had come from the 5 and dime, a quarter apiece, and she had never thought of them as anything except the coffee cups. Anchor Hawking produced Fire King Jadeite from the late 1940s through 1976, sold through diner supply catalogs as commercial wear because it was nearly indestructible, stackable, and inexpensive. It crossed over into home kitchens and stayed. When I first looked up current prices for jadeite, I assumed I was reading them wrong. A Jane Ray mug, $50 to $150 depending on condition. The Alice Blue pattern, a pressed geometric design on the exterior, sells above $200 per piece. A full Fire King Jadeite table service with original packaging has reached $1,200 at auction. A single mug, 25 cents in 1955, $200 now. Not an inflation adjustment, not a complete set, one mug. She stored them upside down on a folded cloth in the cabinet because that is where chips start, at the rim, and she had been taught this by her mother. She did not have a word for the practice. She just did not like chips. Her mother's reason was the same. If this is the first time you have realized what might be sitting in your grandmother's kitchen right now, subscribe. What comes next is the one that surprises people most. Number 3. Griswold cast iron skillet. The cast iron skillet that hung on the hook beside the stove. Heavy enough to lift with both hands, black from years of seasoning, smooth as river stone on the cooking surface. Every few months, she seasoned it with lard, a thin coat worked in with a cloth, then an hour in a low oven, and the smell that came out of the kitchen was a smell she had known her whole life without ever naming it. It was a Griswold. The Griswold Manufacturing Company operated in Erie, Pennsylvania from 1865 until 1957, making cast iron cookware distributed nationally and used in home kitchens across generations. The number 8 skillet, 10 1/4 inches across, was the standard, deep enough for a whole chicken, broad enough for anything else. Price in 1952, approximately $3. A clean Griswold number 8 in good condition sells today for $400 to $600. The slant logo variant, an earlier casting where the G is italicized, brings $600 to $800. The Erie pattern, earliest of all, has sold above $1,000 to collectors who specialize in nothing else. What makes it worth that is the finishing. Griswold cast iron was hand ground after casting, the cooking surface smooth to near glass, flat enough to sit without wobble on any burner. The machines that produce that finish no longer exist. Modern cast iron is cast and sold without the grinding step. You can feel the difference the moment you pick up both. The old pan is smooth under your hand. The new one is textured. She never washed it with soap. She had been told not to by the woman who gave it to her, who had been told the same thing. That is also why it survived. The ones washed with soap and left wet in the sink are the ones that corroded. The ones now worth $600 are the ones maintained by women who had learned how, not from a podcast, but from the person who handed it over. There is something worth sitting with in that. The most valuable things in some of these kitchens survived precisely because someone paid attention to them, not because they were valuable, because they were being used. Number 2, Pyrex Primary Colors Mixing Bowl Set. 4 bowls nested, yellow, red, green, and blue, with the largest holding 4 quarts. The Pyrex logo in white on the inside of each bowl. The colors solid and clean on the outside. Corning produced them from the late 1940s onward. They appeared in kitchen supply sections, hardware stores, and the homeware aisle at Woolworths. The set in 1955 sold for $7.95 for all 4. A complete primary colors set today, all 4 bowls, no rim chips, color saturated, sells for $200 to $600. In mint condition with the original box, $800 to $1,000. Individual bowls in discontinued patterns like gooseberry or butterprint sell for $150 to $300 each for a single bowl. Evelyn had the primary color set. It sat on the second shelf above the stove. She used the yellow bowl for eggs and the blue one for batter, the Tuesday cake, the Wednesday pie crust, whatever needed the most room. She would have told you she kept them because she had always had them and they did what she needed. Her granddaughter found them when she cleared out the apartment. She almost put them in the donation box. She put them in the car instead, for no clear reason except that they were her grandmother's and they were pretty. She looked them up 3 weeks later. Every item on this list survived the same way. Not because it was expensive, not because anyone knew it would become worth something. It survived because the woman who owned it maintained it, dried it before putting it away, kept the set together, and passed it to someone who continued. The filter was not wealth or taste or foresight. The filter was this. Someone paid attention to it. The Jadeite mug that now sells for $200 is not worth $200 because of the glass. It is worth $200 because it was stored upside down on a cloth every day for 30 years by a woman who had been taught that objects deserve that. Number one is not a thing she owned. It is the only reason any of this is still here. Number one, she kept everything. She did not keep the cast iron because she thought it would appreciate. She kept it because throwing something out required a reason. So did buying something new. The default was maintain it, repair it. When you are done, give it to someone who is not. That is why these objects exist to be photographed and auctioned now. Not because Pyrex is extraordinary glass or Griswold is extraordinary iron, because someone maintained them. Because still useful was category enough to hold a mug, a skillet, a set of bowls for 50 years. Nothing manufactured today will sit on an estate sale table in 70 years, priced at $600. The things made to be replaced will be replaced. She did not know that. She just put the percolator away dry, every morning, without thinking about it. Evelyn's granddaughter still has the Pyrex set. She uses the blue bowl for batter. She's not especially careful with it. That is not the point. The point is that Evelyn was careful without thinking of it as care. She kept things because keeping things was what you did. She passed them down because there was no other plan. Which one of these was in your grandmother's kitchen? The Pyrex on the shelf, the Griswold on the stove, the Jadeite mug stored upside down in the cabinet. Tell me in the comments. I read everyone.